going to show you how I make the pie crust. So I start off with 1.5 cups of AP flour. So I've pre-measured those. And I've pre-measured 2 tablespoons of sugar, which is optional, and a half teaspoon of salt. And I then pulse that. Sometimes I use powdered sugar, by the way. I think it actually works better than granulated sugar. So just make sure that's well incorporated. The first key, in my opinion, is cubing the butter. And so the way I do that, this flour out of the way, is I cut lengthwise once, and then I rotate it 90 degrees, and cut it lengthwise a second time. And that will define, and I want to make equal cubes, so cutting it into 4s like that helps me do that. And then you want to break this up. This is really the key technique to get the butter or the fat incorporated, is to use small chunks. And so I find this is the easiest way to do that. And it looks laborious, but it's really not that bad. And then when I get this fat, and this is 1 stick of butter, 8 tablespoons. I will also use 2 heaping tablespoons of shortening, but I will incorporate that in a separate jaunt here. Okay, so again, I'll put the cover on the food processor. And I give this about 10 pulses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? All I want to do is get that butter incorporated with the flour, but I don't want, that thing about the pea size and all of that. I don't buy into that. You want nice, good chunks of fat in here. Believe it or not, it's the water that's going to dissolve the flour and bind the flour. Now, obviously the fat will do a significant binding itself, but it's really the water that dissolves the flour and brings that all together. So now I'm just going to pulse it maybe 5, 6 times. Okay. And if I could zoom in on that, you would probably find, it's pretty hard to zoom here with my small kitchen, but the butter and the flour, it's just big chunks of butter, big chunks of shortening in there. It has it incorporated. It's just covered basically and chopped up. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll add the water, and I just use ice cold water. In this case it's filtered. And so what I do is I'm going to use about a 1/3 cup, but I start off with a 1/4 cup and I pour that around. I do that with the lid off. I don't pour it through the center because it doesn't seem to distribute it. And really, when you're making pie dough, the less you process this, the best. So, and now it's still really dry, okay, and that's okay, but I can feel it's coming together. There's large chunks of butter and fat, and so now I'm just going to add, I happen to know by looking at it, it's going to need 2 tablespoons. Technically, you could do this a tablespoon at a time, but it looks like, we're in winter here, it's dry, furnace has been running, so chances are it's going to take 3 tablespoons. And you want to add water to this just to the point it's going to start balling up. You don't really want it to ball up. If it balls up, that means you added too much water. Okay, that's just like perfect. See, it's just sticking together here. I could put just maybe a teaspoon more water in there, but I'm not. Okay, that's fine just as is. Now, if it was a little bit drier air, I'd add probably another teaspoon Again, you can just feel it, but it's damp, but you notice it's not in that ball stage. So what I do, and again, technically this is optional, but it just makes it easier to roll out. What I do is I dump the entire mix onto some wax paper, and I'm going to refrigerate it just for maybe half an hour. And then when we come back to roll it out, it's just going to roll out perfect every time. Okay, I try to avoid handling it too much with my hands. I think a lot of what you read about baking and pie dough making is a bunch of podunk, balderdash, whatever. But I do try to keep the dough, try to keep my hands out of it as much as possible. And so here I am using my hands. And what I want to do here is form a nice disc. And that's going to make rolling this out much easier a little bit later. Okay, I can feel this is just like perfect dough here. And so I'm just getting it all nice, incorporated, all nice and smashed together. I'm going to try to zoom in. Oh, wow, you're not seeing what I'm showing here. Bummer. Okay, it's, if you can see it, there's like big chunks of butter in there. That's really what you want. Yeah, sorry about that. I kind of zoomed down enough so you just see me incorporate that into a disc. And so then I just roll this up in the wax paper, like so. And this disc will go into the fridge for about a half an hour. Well, it's been about a half hour, and so we have our dough out of the refrigerator, and I don't know if we'll be able to see that in the video, but it's got lots of butter fat specks. We need to get our pan, just out of interest's sake, here's a Marie Callender pan, or whoever that is, from California actually. You'll notice a Baker's Square or Marie Callender pan, much smaller than the pan that you would normally use at home. I'm going to use a metal pan, and of course you want to select the pan first because that determines how large of a diameter of a pie crust you're going to roll out. I roll out my pie crust on a canvas sheet. You can buy these online, Amazon, for a couple of bucks, or go to Walmart and buy yourself a little bit of canvas and hem it up, or have someone hem it up. I always flour the canvas just slightly. Don't need a lot. And we will get our nice dough. Now, again, see, we have this nice disc, and that's going to help us roll this out. And I always pat it down onto the canvas and get a little bit of flour on there. Maybe a little more, just a tad. And like everything else, there's a right and a wrong way to roll out pie dough. And you want to start out going a couple of times in one direction, turn the dough 90, and do it again. So get this going here a little bit. And you want to roll from the center out. So then we want to spin this a little bit and go in this direction. And if you do this properly, you'll get a nice circle. By the way, again, we have some really great chunks of butter in here. And again, we're going to want to spin this. And now I am not using good technique. I'm doing this fast because I need to get back to work here. But anyways, you can see it's rolling out perfectly. Probably could use just a little bit more flour there. And so when you get that out to the size, I go about 1.5 inches or so beyond the size of the pan. That's easily enough. And I just roll this right up onto the rolling pin. And roll it out onto the pan, like so. And voila, we have ourselves a beautiful pie crust. Normally I'll trim this, but again, I'm just doing this really quickly. You don't really want this much pie crust around the edge. It'll lose its definition when it bakes. But I'm just Again, doing this really quickly. But as you can see, the pie crust, if you use this recipe and this technique, the crust will turn out perfectly every time. You've got these huge gobs of fat in here, which when they heat up, they're going to release their moisture. You're going to get that nice flaky crust. And the crust won't be soggy. It'll just turn out perfect. Okay, let's flute this. You can use a fork and use the tines of a fork, or I just use my little finger method here. There you go. A beautiful pie crust. It works every time. Never have a problem rolling it out. Never have a problem with it not baking right. I mean, this is just going to be an absolute perfect crust. And it works this way every time. And the reason is we use the right techniques for incorporating the butter, the right technique for getting exactly the right amount of water. We roll it out the right way on a little bit of a floured surface. I roll it out on canvas because that's what I've always done. Obviously, you can roll it out on wood, on marble, anything else. I just find that these little mats, you know, make clean up a breeze, and it's always ready for the next time. So now all we got to do is come up with a filling and have some pie.